Hello everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I am here today with my October and November wrap up all in one video because I never filmed one of these in October. So I thought let's just whack them together and do one big wrap up, and then we've only got one more left after this for the year of 2024, which I just think is crazy. But anyway, we're going to talk through obviously all the books I read in October and November. So the first book I read this month was Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. Guys, 4.5 stars. 4.5 stars. Basically the premise is it's the second in a series, but it's an interconnected standalone series, so I would recommend the first one anyway, which is Part of Your World. I read that one earlier this year or maybe last year, I can't remember. But yeah, basically the premise of this one is we've got two characters that both work in a hospital, and the male main character, Jacob, has really bad anxiety, like really struggles with his anxiety, and you see that on the page, so obviously do beware of that. It is a bit of a trigger warning. There are, like, I'm pretty sure there are panic attacks on page and a lot of discussion of anxiety. It's definitely a very big part of the book, which I loved because I'm also anxious, so I appreciated the representation. I found it very realistic for me. Obviously everyone's experience of mental health is different, but for me I found it a very realistic portrayal. It didn't feel kind of sensationalized to be in a book or anything like that. It felt very raw and very real. So yeah, I gave it a 4.5 stars. I read this when I was in the midst of one of the worst anxious times of my life. I'm still very anxious now. That was a few weeks ago, but I read it when I was like right in like the thick of it. Maybe if I hadn't read it when I was so anxious, it could have been a 5-star, but I'll never know because I read it when I was like having an anxious breakdown, so who knows. But anyway, I still loved it. The next book I read was The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. I listened to this one on audio. I read Yours Truly on my Kindle and then I listened to The Dead Romantics on audio. This one is about a girl who like falls in love with a ghost. Yeah, I gave it 3 stars. It was fine, but this isn't a romance book. I feel like this is a theme with Ashley Poston books, that like they're just not romance books, and we should probably stop saying that they are because the romance in this was so wildly underdeveloped because it's not a romance book, and there is a really big theme in this book that I didn't know about, and it doesn't say it on the back of the book, so obviously I'm not going to say it here because it'd be a spoiler. That was the main theme of the book. There is something in here that happens to the main character, not to her but like affects her. That is the main point of the book. The romance is definitely like on the sidelines and therefore just really isn't very well developed at all. So yeah, The Dead Romantics, like, it was fine. Like, it was literally just fine. If it's on your radar, if it sounds interesting to you, read it, but I wouldn't go out of your way. I think there's definitely better like ghosty books out there. The next book I read, oh god, I'm so obsessed, was Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I've been putting this off and I don't know why. I feel like Caraval doesn't get that good reviews because people much prefer Once Upon a Broken Heart and that trilogy. But if Once Upon a Broken Heart is really that much better than Caraval, surely they're going to be 6-star reads then, because Caraval was amazing. I gave it a 4.25 star. Loved it so much. Basically we've got, Caraval is like a game, and it's on an island that travels around, like the game travels around to different places, and it's like a mixture of, like, as the reader obviously you can tell it's like a magical place, but for the people that's in it, like, they never know what's real and what's part of the game and what's going to have lasting consequences and what isn't, and what's just going to fix itself after the game and blah blah blah. Amazing, incredible. The world building in this was stunning. The descriptions, the use of language, gorgeous, without being complex. It's not dense. I didn't find it difficult to read, but it's just beautiful, and I'm so excited to read the rest of the series. Obsessed. The next book I read, god, I really don't have physical copies of many of these, do I? I do have a stack of physical copies. Clearly I wasn't focusing on my physical TBR towards the beginning of October. The next book I read was Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, and I really like this one. I'm not typically that much of a classics girl. I can find them quite difficult to read and difficult to get my head around. I don't enjoy particularly I love descriptive language, but not when it's overly flowery for no reason and like doesn't serve a purpose and just is convoluted. I didn't find Rebecca convoluted. I found it quite easy to follow, quite easy to understand. Again, the descriptions, the gothic, stunning, loved it, gave it 4 stars. I feel like the plot could have been better. Like if I was Rebecca, who's a ghost by the way, I didn't even explain the premise. Rebecca is a ghost and the book is about her husband's new wife and her husband, but it's more like from the point of view of the wife and following them. If I was Rebecca, I would have haunted them so much. Like they were so annoying. But anyway, loved it, 4 stars. The next one I read was To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. If you love this book, you might just want to not listen to the next 30 seconds of this video because I gave this 1.5 stars. I hated it. I hated it. I was enjoying it for the first little bit. It was fun, silly, cute vibes. Why did she lie about having a twin that died from leukemia though? And I don't understand how we're just glossing over that. Like, it was made out to just be like a little joke that she told the neighbour that she had a twin that died of leukemia, but then like never corrected herself, never owned up to that. And even in the book, like it's not a big thing. It's just like one line that she said that and then we just move on. Like what? Like I understand that as kids we say like, you know, weird shit and like you don't understand when you're a kid the gravity of what you're saying, but why did that need to be in the book? It served no purpose. I thought it was a really weird choice from the author to even include that. Like it was literally just one throwaway line, but it just stuck in my head so much because I don't get it. Why would you do that? I don't understand. So I gave this 1.5 stars. Did not love it. The next book I read wasn't much better. After Love. I gave this a 2 star. So it was better, but not much better. This, I was so disappointed. This is one of my most disappointing reads of the year. I was so excited for this. I didn't even tell you the premise of To All the Boys I've Loved Before, but everyone knows what that book is about. She sends letters to all her ex-boyfriends, blah blah blah. This one, we've got our main character who falls in love with a girl called Poppy. In this world, I don't know how much I can actually say. Okay, yeah, I can say, okay. So Ash dies, that is on the back of the book. She dies and is invited to the afterlife, but Poppy is still alive. So that's quite difficult because basically they have to like not be seen. So they still kind of like half physically exist when they're in the afterlife. Sounds interesting, doesn't it? The execution was not interesting. I just found this felt really flat. I found it boring. Just such an amazing premise. Just did not pay off for me at all, unfortunately. I feel really bad, but I can't lie, like I just didn't enjoy it. The next book, we've got quite a couple of good ones now. So the next book I read was Emily Wilde's Map of the Other Lands, which is the second Emily Wilde book. Basically this follows Emily Wilde. I'm going to talk more about the series, not this specific second book, I'm not about to spoil anything. Emily Wilde likes fairies and studying them, and she's like, what, like not a professor, I don't think. She's like a researcher, a studier of fairies, of the fae, and it's just following her adventures really as she goes like out and about searching for fairies. It's a slow, cosy fantasy, but it's not boring. When I say slow, I just mean like we're not in a war. It's different to the other fantasies in that way, but it isn't boring. There's so much that happens in these books. Constant adventures, constant things going wrong and things to fix. It's just cozy at the same time and beautifully written, and the setting is just gorgeous. I wish I had physical copies of these books because the covers are stunning. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. Slightly lower than the first one, but I think that's probably just the nature of it being the second book in a series. It definitely didn't have like middle book syndrome, but obviously because what I love about these books so much is like the world and the descriptions, I already got a lot of that in book 1. So book 2 did feel like more of the same, but not in a bad way. It just didn't wow me as much because it wasn't new to me anymore. But yeah, I really loved it. The next one is The Long Way Down, which is part of the Addicted Calorie Sisters series by Krista and Becca Ritchie. And this is the last book in Ryke and Daisy's point of view, and they are my favourite couple of the series, so it's no surprise I gave this one 4.5 stars. It was a bit too long, hence the 4.5 and not the 5 star. It just didn't give me the 5 star feelings. But there were some really harrowing moments in this book, really emotional moments, had me bawling my eyes out. It definitely made me feel a lot, which I always love in a book. I don't want books to like literally make me depressed, but I like it when they just make me feel something and make me feel connected to the characters and like I can empathise with them. So yeah, I really love this one. I can't talk too much about what it's about because it's the 9th book in a 10-book series, but the series as a whole follows these 3 sisters. There are 4 sisters, but only 3 of them get points of view. The other one's kind of living her own life. She is in the books, but she's not a main character. It follows these 3 sisters through their lives. It's very slice of life. You see them all fall in love and go through heartbreak and everything in life. You just spend time with them over the course of like 10 years or however long it is, and it's stunning. I love it. The next one I read was another slight disappointment, and it's Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson, I believe. Yeah, it's a 3-star, so it's not a bad book, but I thought it was going to be a 5. It's being sold to me by the internet as like the enemies to lovers, like the best enemies to lovers book. Where was the enemies to lovers though? I just didn't get the tension that I was hoping for between the characters, like the will they, won't they. Like it was very clear that like they just will. I didn't feel like there was any true like barrier really to them being together, or do you know what I mean? It just didn't really feel like, yeah, like there was any tension or anything to kind of look forward to, like it was clear what was going to happen. Basically the premise of it is, I've always found it so hard to explain. We've got our 2 main characters. One of them comes from an outlaw family and the other one is like a thief. I don't think she has parents. Kind of the classic girl that comes from nothing trope that we see a lot in fantasy and definitely can be done very, very well. And they find themselves together on a big old journey, and the book is basically following that. And it just, yeah, I'm still going to read the 2nd book in the series, but it just fell a bit flat. I really thought this was going to be like one of my favourite fantasies ever, and unfortunately it just wasn't. So the next one I read, Daydream by Hannah Grace. This is another book that I thought was going to be a 5-star, 6-star. Even whilst I was reading it, I was like, this is incredible. However, I'm not going to go into detail, but I had a panic attack whilst reading this book. If you are a metaphobic, if you have a metaphobia, please be careful reading this one. It's not particularly graphic, but it comes out of nowhere. Like the mentions of it are very, just like, oh, that's what we're talking about now. And the reason it bothered me is because it wasn't even really like a, oh, I'll take care of you scene. Like, you know how that can be a real pivotal moment in a book where you've got 2 people and one of them is ill and it's like a real turning point in the relationship when they care for each other. It didn't even serve that purpose. So I just, yeah. Another controversial reason that I didn't love this, I gave it 4 stars by the way. I'm not saying I didn't like it. I did like it. The main problem, because I can't like knock a rating because of the homophobia thing, because that's a me problem. However, I kind of prefer them as friends. I kind of think that Hallie and Henry are like friend soulmates rather than romantic soulmates. I don't see them as a book couple like that would last beyond university. That's the premise of this, by the way. It's like a hockey college romance. Henry is the captain of the hockey team. It's the 3rd book in the Icebreaker series. I should have mentioned that before. And Hallie is like a bookish girl who loves Taylor Swift. So I mean, I really thought this was going to be it because I loved Henry in the other books. But yeah, unfortunately, I love them both and I love their interactions, but I just prefer them as friends. And a metaphobia warning. The next one I read was The Cinnamon Bun Bookstore. This is the 2nd one. I don't know what the series is actually called, but the 1st book is The Pumpkin Spice Cafe. This one is basically like the same book but set in a bookstore. Basically, our main character works in a bookstore and someone keeps leaving clues in the books. But that's not as big of a part of the plot as I kind of thought it was going to be. And then someone sees her one day finding the clues and was like, oh, I'll help you with those. And then this man suddenly decides, despite knowing the main character for years, that he's like, oh my god, he's obsessed with her and he really needs a chance with her, and she's like the most beautiful thing he's ever seen, even though he's known her for years and never realised this before, which is weird. Because it's not a build-up, he just realises it randomly on, I don't know, page 3 probably. So insta-love. The way that they try and get around it is that it's like a summer fling. So they're together for like almost the whole book, but they're saying like it's not going to last, it's not going to be long term, blah blah blah. But again, as someone that likes tension in a book, this just didn't hit for me. And also, this is set in the summer, so do bear that in mind. It looks like a very autumnal read. It's not. It's literally set in the middle of the summer, so don't read that if you wanted an autumnal read. Save it for the summer. Did I even say I gave it 2.5 stars? It was fine. It wasn't bad. It was just, it didn't give me anything. The next one I read was the last book in the Addicted Calloway Sisters series, which is Some Kind of Perfect. This is the epilogue novel, so you get the point of view of all 6 of the main characters that we've seen in the other books. And it's just slice of life, just random scenes from their life. Some are very big, some are like the smallest little things that happen to them. I gave this 4.75. It was a very long book. It was like 800 pages or something. But I loved it because I love these characters. So I just love spending time with them. And I'm such a slice of life person. I don't know if you picked that up from how many times I mention it. But I do love books that are very character driven and just kind of follow a character's life. They have to be somewhat interesting. Like, I don't just want to read about people walking around Tesco's, because I can walk around Tesco's myself. But because these characters have very, very different lives from me, I find it fascinating, even though obviously they're not real. I find it fascinating to read slice of life when it's like something different from my own existence. I gave it 4.75, not 5, because huge emetophobia warning, huge. I'm talking like on page, the whole build up, the symptoms, the bodily sensations, the action, all on page in one chapter. I skipped the chapter. And again, what annoyed me about it is that it's not even an I'll take care of you scene. The person just goes to bed and then wakes up the next day, like no one looks after them or anything. So it's not even like, there's no point to it. It was just a random scene where it happened for literally no reason. So I docked 0.25 stars for that. And then after that I read The Prisoner's Throne by Holly Black. This is the second book in the, what is it called? I just keep calling it the Stolen Heir duology, but I don't think that's what it's called. I think it has its own name, but I don't know what the name of it is. Basically, this is a companion duology to the Cruel Prince series. I am obsessed with the Cruel Prince series. It's a 5-star. The first book of this, The Stolen Heir, I think I gave it a 2.5. I hated that book. I really, really didn't enjoy it. This one, I gave it a 3.5. It was much better. I still don't love Oak as much as I thought I would. What I appreciate about this is that there's a lot more Jude and Carden. A lot of people said that this book was fan service for the people that like the Cruel Prince trilogy, and a lot of people wish that Holly Black had stuck with doing something different with this duology. I'm personally glad she went in this direction because I didn't like the first book, so if she was carrying on down that road I would have ended up DNFing. So I'm glad that this is a lot more linked to the Cruel Prince. It just felt like we were actually doing something of worth in this book. The first one felt like they were just walking through trees all day talking about moss, whereas this one actually felt more like, okay, we're getting somewhere. There's some intrigue here. There's something going on that I can actually root for. So I did enjoy this one. Not a favourite book of all time. Nowhere near on the level of the Cruel Prince trilogy, because like just the politics and everything in that one are just stunning and just wonderful. Wonderfully written. This is still well written. I just don't care for the characters or the plot of it as much as the Cruel Prince. But this was, for me, much better than The Stolen Heir. So at least we've got that. What did I read next? We've got 4 books left. And the next one was another hit. We've had quite a few good books these last 2 months. We've definitely had a lot of flops. Like, really, like 1-2 star flops. But we've also had, like, some really high rated books. This one, These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, is a Romeo and Juliet retelling set in 1920s Shanghai. And it's immaculate. Stunning. I gave it a 4.25. It might even be a 4.5. I am so excited to read the second one. I'm literally going to start it today. I'm going to go out for my lunchtime walk after I've filmed this and start listening to the second audiobook. I just don't even know what to say about this book because I just adored it. I just adored it. I love Romeo and Juliet anyway. I am a bit of a geek when it comes to English. I love it. And I think this was done so well. It kept enough elements of Romeo and Juliet that it did feel like a Romeo and Juliet retelling. Like, it hadn't just been done like to garner attention. Like, it actually is a Romeo and Juliet retelling, but it's different enough to Romeo and Juliet that it stands on its own and it's its own individual story. Is the female main character called Juliet? Yes. Is the male main character called Roma? He is indeed. Is that potentially a little bit, come on, might be. However, I didn't care because the book was so good. The setting was amazing, the plot stunning. As I said, the Romeo and Juliet elements really lent itself well to the story without taking kind of the focal point. Obsessed, loved it, can't wait to read the second one. And I think there's other books that like link in with these ones as well. So I will, as long as the second book doesn't, you know, majorly flop, I will be reading the whole like interconnected universe of this because I loved it. The next one was it's complicated, right? So the next one I read was The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang, the second book in the Poppy War trilogy, and I listened to this one on audio. I gave it a 3-star. Did I enjoy it at a 3-star level? No, it would be like a 2. However, the book is objectively good, I just don't like it. So I struggle to rate things like that, where it's like there's objectively nothing wrong with this, right? It's just not for me. It's not my type of fantasy, and the story didn't go in the direction that I hoped it would. I said the same when I read The Poppy War. I was so hopeful at the beginning of The Poppy War that I would adore this trilogy, but then quite quickly the plot went in a direction that just isn't my preference, but there's nothing wrong with it. Like, R.F. Kuang is clearly an amazing writer, and these books are so clever and just very, very well written. It's just personal preference. I just don't love them. I don't love the direction that the story has gone in. There's nothing wrong with it. So I rated it 3-star. I felt like that felt fair. It was like a combination of, I can appreciate that this is objectively a good book, but I also have to factor in my own enjoyment, which wasn't very high, unfortunately, when I was reading this one. And then we've got 2 books left. We've got another banger, guys. Forest of Souls by Laurie M. Lee. This has sat on my shelves for so long, and I don't know why I've never picked it up. I think it's because, like, it's about spiders. It's not about spiders, but there are quite a lot of spiders in it, and I don't really like spiders, but I really like this book. I gave it a 4.25. So the premise of this one, we've got our main character, Saoirse, who, again, she comes from nothing. She's an orphan. She has, like, no name, like, no family name, which, where she lives, is very important. Like, it's very hard to make something of yourself in this world if you don't come from a noble family, which she doesn't. And she's aiming to be kind of an apprentice of someone who works for the Queen, and she's basically hinged her whole life on becoming this apprentice. Like, she can't see a world where she can be successful if she doesn't be the apprentice. So you're just basically following that, her journey with either becoming or not becoming the apprentice, what happens along the way. It really opens up as well, like, beyond just where she lives. You get to learn more about the other parts of the world, but not in a way that's like, oh my god, can we just stand still for 10 minutes? Like, she moves around and learns about the other places, but I don't like journeys in fantasy. I should say this. This doesn't feel like a journey. Like, she settles in places and learns things about the places and actually lives there. And I loved it. I'm so excited again to continue on with this series. Stunning. The last book I read this month was not stunning. Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. I should have DNF'd. I really should have just DNF'd. This is too long of a book to push through. It's like, how many pages is this? Just over 400, like 450 pages. It's a YA contemporary about 2 twins that go off to university, and up until now they've been very joined at the hip, like very much doing everything together. When they get to uni, one of the twins is like, I kind of want to be more independent. The other twin, Kath, who is the one that we are in the perspective of, she's like kind of blindsided by this. She wasn't expecting this. She thought they were going to go and like do everything together. So it's following Kath. But Kath is rude and annoying and doesn't take into account anyone else's thoughts, feelings or experiences in life. So I found her quite insufferable, and therefore found the book quite difficult to read because, as I said, I'm a character driven girl, so if I don't like the characters and they are supposed to be likeable, I'm gonna struggle. I gave it 2 stars. I'm not saying it's like objectively a bad book. I think probably if I'd have read that when I was like 14, 13, I would have probably loved it and related a lot more to Kath being like quirky. But like at the end of the day, Kath is supposed to be like 18 in this book and she reads like a 12-year-old. So that's that. They are all the books I read in October and November. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up down below. Subscribe so you don't miss our last wrap up of the year in December, and also all the videos that are coming before that. I have quite a lot of videos planned for December, so I'm probably going to be uploading quite a bit more than normal to get all the videos out before the new year. So subscribe so you don't miss all of those, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!